Welcome to another edition of Life Journey. I'm Dr. Ralph Smith. Well, as we move into our new year, the exciting year of 2016, we kind of look back behind us and we think about all the things that we wanted to do, but we never took time to prepare for. All the disappointments perhaps we've dealt with, and unfortunately most folks, if you're normal, and I assume you're normal watching this show, of course, but if you're normal, you look at this and you say, boy, if I could only done this, or I could only done that. Or you make the mistake that a lot of people do, and they come up with those so-called New Year resolutions, and they go ahead and come up with a resolution, and they know that it's something they're probably not going to accomplish, but they figure, well, this gives me a goal to aim for, and if I don't reach it, at least I tried. And that's usually tied around like cigarette smoking, drinking less beer, weight issues, romance perhaps, whatever the case might be. And even though that's a good attempt, and I'll give you an A for trying, that really doesn't solve the issue. And the issue at hand, which you need to agree on as a group or as an individual, is I want a better life, I want to get control of my life, and I want to celebrate my victories. And that's what this edition of Life Journey is all about. But in going forward in dealing with your life plan, and I know that we all approach this differently, so when you hear about some of the ideas we have and what I call foundation, apply it to your personal life and make the different adjustments that's necessary. But Cameron, who's a local youth here in the Port Angeles area, he's had quite a life. He's had different challenges perhaps, different successes, but we're going to walk through with Cameron and put together a life plan that will not only address his needs that he has now, but in building for the future. And that's really important for our youth to do that because they need to have something to reach for, a goal to obtain. And they need to have these life goals on what they want to do, not to please mom, not to please dad, please their friends, have a great financial gain where they have to move their checking account every 3 months because it exceeds $250,000. None of that. It's about living life, enjoying life, and feeling better as a person of your contributions to yourself and to society when you get to start all over again with the year 2017. So we're going to take a quick break. I will introduce Cameron to you, and you're going to learn not only a lot of things about his life, which I know you'll find interesting, but perhaps even more important, how he's putting his life plan together, hitting the elements that need to be addressed, so that when we visit with him a year from now, we're going to share his success stories. We'll be right back after this break. Well, first of all, Cameron, welcome to the show. As you know, our Life Journey shows are here to provide information, but also it's in a way we find out a lot of neat things about you that we can use against you later. So realize this is on tape, so we can use it on you later, okay?
All right.
But we really are pleased that you've joined us because not only your youth and your age versus the old man over here, but we're trying to get the point across to people, and we talk about it all the time, about how you go through life and have a plan. And the reason why we ask people to have a plan is because of the fact that we don't want them just to react to everything they do. Because as you know from the previous programs we've had, a 25% success rate. I mean, if you're playing shortstop, for the Seattle Mariners and you batted .250, that would be outstanding. But in the world of our life's challenges, 25% is not very good.
No.
So we want to avoid that. So first of all, let's start off with the fact that we want to talk about building a life plan. And I would like you to tell our folks that are tuned in today a little bit about yourself, and so they get to know you a little bit better.
All right. As you know, my name is Cameron, or as far as you know.
Yeah.
I've lived here pretty much my whole life. I started out living in Joyce back before I could remember, and then I moved to Sequim, and then eventually now I'm living here in Port Angeles somewhere.
So you moved to the big time then. You went from the rural area of Joyce, then you went to the old people town in Sequim.
Yeah.
My dad lives there, so I can get away with that. And then you come to the big town, Port Angeles.
Here I am. I'm
city
in the
of
big
power.
leagues now.
Boy,
yeah.
isn't that something? So you actually have lived in 3 different places. Which one did you enjoy the most?
Well, to be completely honest, I like where I live now the most.
Okay.
Largely just because back when I was living in Sequim, my pattern of moving was like kind of sporadic. We never owned a house; we were always renting.
Right.
So first we were renting from the actual company that my mom was working at, and that was back when I was in 4th grade through early 6th grade, and then they had to evict us because they decided they were going to move the office into that house.
Oh, okay.
So then we went and we were rented somewhere else, and then that guy, I'm not going to go into it, but essentially
Right.
we had to move a bunch of times in like 1 year, and then eventually we ended up where we are now, and now we're actually the owners, and it's just really nice to have that kind of peace of mind to know that nobody can just be like, hey, we decided we're going to do something else with the house, move.
So you actually have control as long as you keep the bank happy and pay
Yeah.
the mortgage. Talking about your life, what are the things, and I don't want you to get too personal here, but what would be the 2 things that you're most proud of in your life? And what are the 2 things that perhaps you'd change if you had the chance?
I think the thing I'm most proud of in my life is probably my own perception of the kind of person that I am. I consider myself, and I don't mean to be, inflated head about this, but I feel like I'm a pretty decent person at least. I'm somewhat pacifistic. I always think that issues can be solved with words, and I don't think there's ever really much of any reason to be
Well, that's
angry
good.
about anything.
So you have a good self-esteem, self-worth, and you've got a good appraisal of yourself that you're a good person. And that's
Yeah.
an important step, because that way you don't have to make a bunch of excuses, right?
Yeah.
What's the second thing that you would say that kind of gives us a blueprint of who Cameron is?
Well, I really love to make people smile.
Uh-huh.
Whether that be at my job at the movie theater, which I suppose there goes my alias, but
No, that's fine. No, at the end of this show, we will actually list your home address, so don't worry about that. You don't need to be so protective. And you're still single, right?
yes,
Okay, good.
yes, I am at the date of recording.
Yeah,
Still
that's
single,
okay.
ladies.
Things could change.
Yeah.
So, because you're a good person, you're perceived that way. So, in other words, when you smile or you make people smile, they feel comfortable around you, and
Well,
that's
I would
really
hope
important
so.
too.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, then the only other question that tie into that same regard is, how did you get the nickname The Voice? Because I really want to know that.
Yeah.
Was that a God-given gift, or is this something that you do in the bathroom when you shave once a week?
Well, essentially, it started out. I started working in the movie theater, and at first I was really, really timid because before that I had no prior work experience.
Right.
I never had any dealings talking with people that I didn't know. I had just been sat in the same classroom, surrounded by the same 30 people out of the same, student body for virtually as long as I could remember.
Right.
So I was just trying to figure out how to deal with people, and though first I was timid, I eventually one day decided that I was going to try to make the workday pass a little bit faster by, trying to be a little more jazzy with it,
Right.
so to speak.
But it gives you good people skills.
Yeah,
I mean, you think
yeah.
of all those people
That's what
that
I
come
found
through the
out.
theater that work. So, do you really look at those tickets when people hand it to them?
Yes, you do
It
actually.
really is. And you point them to the right theater, and then
Mhm.
you dump in its little box and stuff.
Yeah,
Is that how you
yeah.
do
Well,
it?
especially with when we have 2 movies playing on or the same movie playing on separate screens. Got to check the number on it, make sure you're pointing the right way.
Right.
Otherwise, you look like an idiot.
Well, that's true. That's true. You don't want to
I've
look like
done
an
that.
idiot, because it's kind of
I've done that
We've got a
many
good-sized
times.
community, but people probably keep coming back to the theater.
Yeah,
It's not like
yeah.
they have a lot of choices.
Yeah, we have
in
lots
Port
of
Angeles,
regulars.
so
In the theater business, there's a specific repercussion. We have a very special term for it. For giving away confidential details like that.
Okay.
It's called being fired.
Okay. Well, we don't want you. All right. So we'll move into the life plan then. But anyway. I just do what I'm told, so I just want to let you know.
Yeah.
Let's get real serious. Let's talk about your life plan.
All right.
You're a young man under the age of 21.
That I am.
You love life. You're happy with where you live. You do a great job of supporting your family and taking care of your mom, which is very commendable. I really respect you for that. But there will be a day when that special someone's going to wander in your life, and you decide, you know what? It's time for me to start a family. And you find that special someone, and you get married, and you start getting your nice home, and then you want to go ahead and have children. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you wake up and you're 35 years old.
Yeah.
Trust me, it happens. So in that way of thinking, and even though you're young, talk to me about the 4 different areas, and I'll list each one for you, and how you're going to prepare a life plan. And what I'd like to do is kind of walk you through the format of picking these, because we'll have our viewers also do the same thing.
Okay.
And then once you put your life plan together, we'll see if we can talk the boss, Patrick, into putting it on our website, and they can use it kind of like a blueprint, if that's okay with you.
I think
that
that'd
all
be
right?
all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And by the way, and on the blueprint of that, we'll not only have your address and your phone number, but we'll say Lonely in Port Angeles. I mean, look what it did to that movie Lonely in Seattle, remember?
Yeah,
Because I mean, Meg Ryan.
that's just 3 hours away.
I'm trying to do a little.
You can work here.
I'm trying to do some movie trivia here to relate to.
Yeah.
I hope I'm impressing.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk about the first goal. To be a success as you get to be an adult, and I don't mean this in a pure material sense, but you got to have an occupation.
Yeah.
You got to have a way to be able to get a job, qualify for the job, do the job well, make money, and be hopefully happy in the job you're at. What is your goals in looking at an occupation of where you want to be 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and what are you doing to try to solve that part of your life plan?
Well, I'd like to be doing something that doesn't involve just sitting at a desk filing papers.
Okay.
I like to do things that are a little bit more on the hands-on side.
Okay.
Not necessarily entirely that though. I like dealing with people.
Mm-hmm.
I like getting to flex a little bit of creativity now and again.
Okay.
Other than that though, the main thing I'm concerned about is actually being able to make a living wage and support myself. And to a lesser extent, I suppose the people around me too. Yeah.
Well, picture this. Picture that somehow we had a magic wand that we could spread over the front of you, and you could wake up and be in the ideal job that you want to have, and you're 25 years old. What would that job be? And give me a specific job. I mean, do you like bears? Maybe you want to be a forest ranger. I don't know. Do you like to go fishing? Maybe you want to be a fishing guide.
Animals terrifying.
Well, okay, well then you've got a problem there, okay? But what kind of job, if we were to flash forward, would be Cameron's job of choice? Because as you know, the purpose of this question, I'm going to walk you back from that and make sure that you meet the necessary qualifications.
Right.
So what job would that be?
That's something that I've thought about a lot of times, and I keep on getting really close to the mark of figuring out something that I'd like to do and realistically would do, but I'm always just not quite there. I mean, I've gotten close. I mean, the people, the good patrons of the theater,
Right.
For instance, always tell me that I should be on the radio, that I should be a voice actor, but something that I've found is that I'm a terrible actor.
Well, being a voice actor in radio, there's an announcer's position where you just announce, but that's not going to help you in you going out and meeting people and interface with people. But like, for example, if you like to do sports and be a sports deal like Scooter is over at KONP, you get to meet a lot of people, you get to meet the parents, you learn the game of football and whatever the case, or basketball, whatever Scooter's covering at the time, and the interface with the public is great. And you establish a reputation for that. You have the voice for it. But it takes years of practice. You might have to intern, for example.
Yeah.
But it's kind of important to kind of pick some goals. And if you don't want to pick a goal right now at 25, you might look at the theater business. I mean, you've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah,
So maybe you could go
over 2 years now.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, maybe that's something you could enjoy and go beyond just being the usher, but maybe to go out and do some marketing for them, to be able to sell maybe the theater passes. I mean, there are a lot of ways you can take a job that you like, as long as it pays the bills. And I'm going to remind you that a lot of people pick jobs they like and they don't make any money.
Yeah.
But you got to make money and do that. So that would be one element that you need. Now, probably what will force that issue is the day when you decide you want your own pad. In other words, for the younger group of people out there watching us, your own place to live, where you have the come and go. You have the only key. You can have visitors in the middle of the night. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can deliver milk in the morning. I mean, who knows? So when you look at that, does that, make you wonder, well, maybe I really need to jump on real quick and find out what I want to do for an occupation?
It kind of does make me feel that way a little bit. In my experience, how do I phrase this? I'm a little slow moving, be it taking direct action in things that I'm doing with my life.
Are you cautious?
Yeah.
Is that the deal?
yeah.
Do you have a fear of failing, perhaps?
I have an overwhelming fear of failing.
So the thing about that, to solve that, is pick something you're comfortable with and just build it slowly. Because throughout life, in an occupation, relationships, every once in a while you will fail. And be ready to accept that. The key to that is have a plan in case you do fail. And that way it doesn't hit you like a ton of bricks. Okay?
Okay.
Second part, financial. I can tell you for a fact, even a young man who's doing a great job taking care of mom, working the job at theater, doing all the right things, and you're a shiny example of what you should do and what you should be. But sooner or later, you're going to want the finer things in life. Have you thought about putting together a financial budget
and listing things that you need in the day of independence when you get your own place, and then working yourself toward that direction. Have you thought about that?
To a very small extent, I have, but largely I've just kind of been floating in limbo, not really sure where to start.
Well, you got a bunch of debt on you by any chance?
Thankfully, no.
Well, see, there's a good start.
Not in
You
America.
know, there are a lot of people. There you go. But a lot of people, they work behind the ball, which means they pile up all this debt and they try to find a job or get the income to pay for it. So you come in with a clean sheet, so you can almost do anything you want. But it's very important to have a financial plan. Okay.
Okay.
And that's very important. All right, the third element. So we talked about occupation, we talked about financial, and that's your personal life. Folks that have to deal with life, especially being your age, they're going to have all these factors come upon them. And one of the factors is having a personal life. So have you thought about where you want to be there? Looking for someone special, coming up with a hobby, doing some things to help people that need help. And there's a lot of people that need that here in the Port Angeles area. How about your life skills, your personal life skills and goals? What would you like to do there?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's a few different marks that I could hit here. You know, since I do have this real fortunate talent of being able to talk and make it sound a little not like nails on a chalkboard,
Right.
I've looked into, you know, developing that further, see if I could do something with that. But unfortunately, it didn't quite pan out for me. You know, that's something really difficult to try to look for a career in.
But
As
do you keep trying? See, that's the whole thing. And I know you're young and you're thinking, what is this old guy telling me? Well, what I'm telling you is from a guy who's gone through those youthful years, and they just bypass quickly. And I was blessed that I found my special lady when I was 16. And we also did the Dr. Ralph rule, which we haven't done a parenting show yet, but that's coming, where we always say to people they should wait 3 years into a relationship before they start having children. And we followed that rule, Linda and I did. And why that's so important is you want to make sure the relationship is good and solid, because kids get scarred through divorces or separations. And I'm not just talking about marriage, I'm talking about committed relationships. So when you start introducing a lot of people in the equation, that can scar them, and then they have problems growing up. So with that in mind, and talking on the personal side, it kind of ties to the fourth element. And maybe you want to start with the fourth element instead of doing 1, 2, and 3. And talk about the fourth element. You talk about yourself that you like to make people smile, you feel very comfortable with yourself, you've got a great positive attitude. So this is going to seem kind of strange, me even bringing it up. But it's very important for people to be happy. And one of the things that I suggest to them when they're doing a life plan, and whether it be relationships, occupation, dealing with substance issues, whatever the case might be, what is it going to take to make you happy? What are the things that you want to do that not only make you happy and feel fulfilled, because at night you go to bed just like everybody else does, and you got to look up to the heavens sooner or later when you have a moment to do this and say, boy, Lord, I really had a great day today. This was a day that it was really something special, and I can't wait to wake up the next day and have another shot at this. It's what I refer to as the chalkboard theory, where every morning we wake up, we have a clean whiteboard or we have a clean chalkboard that we can start scratching on, because once we go to bed at night and that calendar flips, it's a brand new day, it's a brand new opportunity. So have you ever thought about what are the things in life that make you happy and that would cause you to keep that positive attitude that you have right now?
you know, I've never really sat down and thought about those things.
Well, maybe you should. And growing up as a kid, what are the things that made you most happy? That's a good place to start.
Well, I guess. As a kid, do you mean like yay tall, yay tall, yay tall?
Doesn't matter what age. What do you have? You know, if we were doing this interview, 40 years from now, of course, by then I better be upstairs or I'll be somewhere else. But anyway, let's say we do it 40 years from now, and you look back at your life and you say, I am really happy I did this, or I had that, or whatever the case might be. And I'll give you an example of personal history, and then you kind of relate to it. How's that
Okay,
sound?
yeah, that sounds great.
One of the things that was most important to me is to have children that became my legacy. Not that they were the smartest in the world, not that they made a bunch of money or anything like that, but they're good people. And the way you get that satisfaction is when they start having children, which obviously become my grandchildren. You see them interact with those children and realize all the things that they yelled at me about being a tough parent or not doing stuff, they were doing the same thing and they didn't even know it. And I can remember one Thanksgiving in particular where Lynn and I were sitting there, and I leaned over to my bride and I said to her, you realize that if we didn't meet when we were sophomores in high school and stuff, none of this would be here today. This would have never happened. And she just smiled. She didn't have to say anything. She just smiled. So that's the kind of example I'm talking about. It's an example of picking an occupation. I have probably had 6, 7, 8 different occupations. And people say, well, boy, did you have your focus, doc? No, it was never my idea to be a psychologist. I always wanted to be a talk show host. I can remember sitting in that bed when my mom was ill and everything, and being in high school, and we started our first radio club at La Mirada High School in Southern California. And I can remember my mom telling me, she's passed over 16 years ago, saying, Ralphie, you can do that. And by the way, don't ever call me Ralphie. I said, Ralphie,
all right.
you can do that.
Doc,
you can do that.
is.
And I can remember calling radio stations, trying to get me in intern programs. And one of the proudest moments I had, and it's not about Dr. Ralph, I'm just giving you an example, was the day that I got on KFI radio in Los Angeles, and that signal was so strong it went all the way up to Canada, and they lived in Silverdale at the time, and she could hear me on the radio. And she would call me every night. We didn't have cell phones back then. This was in the really the mid 90s or late 90s. And she'd say, you know, did you ever think about doing this? Did you ever think about doing that? You know, it's not like what Patrick does with me, you know?
Yeah.
And then she would say it out of love. And then I moved out from that, and I loved radio. Always have loved radio. The television thing kind of came later in life. And then we went to KBOI in Boise, 50,000 watt signal. And it was heard everywhere in the Northwest and in Canada. And there we had a show where we had a guy we made up named Phil Gregory. And we were doing the conservative liberal thing. I was being the Alan Combs, which doesn't probably mean much to you, but the real liberal guy.
Yeah.
And try to be real liberal in Boise, you get a lot of attention. And then Phil Gregory was the real conservative guy. And back in that time, you know, Bill Clinton was being impeached, and we argued that trial, and we did everything. And we got people's reactions because radio is entertainment. And with your theater connection, this could be something you could evolve into very easy, especially with your voice. And every night when I got home, that phone call was waiting. And I got out at 12:30 in the morning. I mean, it was from 9 o'clock at night to 12. We would do a debriefing, which we had a producer, much like we have with Patrick. And then I'd get home about 12:30 in the morning. And that phone would ring. And she'd say, Ralphie, you were very tough on Phil Gregory. You need to show him more respect. And I said, Mom, this is all entertainment. This is just pretend. There is no Phil Gregory. His name's Greg Haskins. He's a doc like me. No, Ralph, I know it's trying to be entertaining, but you've got to be respectful because you're a role model. And I mean, she did that to me every single night. And then I would tell Phil about it, or, you know, Greg Haskins, and then he would get real tough on me. And I would wait because I was playing a game with my mom.
Yeah.
I would act real like I couldn't battle back. And then she wouldn't give me a call. So I called her the next morning. I said, why didn't you call me? Because she said, well, you were kept yourself quiet, Dr. Ralph. And she was being sarcastic when she said that. You're being quiet. She says, you know, it might be a good idea to let Phil Gregory talk more than you. I mean, I couldn't please her. And then finally, the final year of her life, God rest her soul, we decided to do a Mother's Day show. And this would relate nicely with your mother too, where we would have Phil Gregory, Greg Haskins' mom, calling in, and we'd have my mom calling in. And we'd interviewed him for a Mother's Day celebration. And I really missed that. In fact, that was the first show we won our Golden Mike Award, which is like an Academy Award type of thing in the radio business. And they just talked about our lives, how we grew up and the whole works. Of course, we would always tease the other mother, saying, why would you let him grow to turn out this way?
Yeah.
And Phil always kept his hair cut real short, and I'd go to her, Mrs. Haskins, you do realize that Phil Gregory has very long hair. When's the last time you've seen it? Well, he'd better cut his hair. And it was wonderful. And then my mother told a story about a zipper problem that I had when I was younger.
Oh.
And we won't go into that here because I don't think we can carry the rating high enough for that one. And she told the whole world, and she thought it was funny. And boy, believe me, I had to put up with that a long time. But I listened to that tape today, not only to hear my mother's voice, but to remember those days and how proud I was, the fact that she was proud of me. So when I share that story with you, whether you go into the radio business or not, you always want to do something to please somebody. You know, you have a big supporter like your mom, you know, getting praise from her means more than any newspaper article has ever been written. So, with that in mind, if the radio is the type of thing you want, then you start going and doing it. You go down to the local radio station, which in this case is KOMP here in Port Angeles, and you go up to Todd. You say, hey, Todd, do you have an announcing, you know, program available, intern program? I'd just like to read some commercials. And if you tell Todd that you're not going to have to be paid, I guarantee you Todd will hire you on the phone. But it'd be ways to live the dream. And if it's something you live that you don't like, you can still be young enough to change. So that's why even at your age, it's so important to have those kind of goals. You see what I mean? And to be able to do that. And I had a very successful business career, made a lot of money, but I always wanted to help people. And finally, I decided to go back to school. I was 42 years old when I got my PhD degree. It was all about helping people. It wasn't about the money. And the rest is history. So I say this to you not only as someone I care a lot about, but to our viewers out there. If you're going to have dreams and you want to have visions of success, and however you label success, at your age now is the time to do it, because you have so many more options than people like myself who are basically going to pasture. We've already played the ball game. We've got the games that we won, we got the games we lost, and now we're around just to get advice to people if they care to hear what we have to say. Unfortunately, it's not like the Eastern cultures where elderly are revered. In America, unfortunately, they don't pay the respect sometimes to our elder citizens. How about that? How hard would that be?
I kind of lost the question there for a bit.
Dreams.
Dreams.
And picking things that you'd like to do growing up. It's just sitting down somewhere on an isolated road, and there's plenty where you live, and just say, gosh, life is rushing by, and boy, if I could do this, or if I could meet this kind of person. Just writing it down and working your way toward it.
You know, I guess it'd be kind of easy. I mean, a problem that I have is that I always really overthink things a lot.
Yes.
Whenever I'm trying to make some sort of decision, I'm always thinking, okay, Cameron, so what does that entail? And then what does that entail, you know, a little later down the road? Where's that going to lead you? Are you going to get it out of that situation if it goes wrong?
You're very analytical. But the
Perhaps
problem of being
overly so.
analytical, especially when you're young, is you spend so much time analyzing, you're not throwing switches. And there's nothing wrong with that, son. It's one of those things that we all do. And you know what that proves? And I'd say this even if we weren't on TV now. It proves you have a heart and that you really care. And a lot of selfish people run around this world, and it's all about me. And those are people that have a lot of problems. And then they come to me and write nice checks. Okay? My last question for you. When you look at your life, and I'm talking about looking backwards in life, and you look at the successes you've had, some of the challenges you've had, all the different things that you've had, have you ever thought about picking a role model? Somebody, and I know it's easy, would be mom or dad or somebody in the family, but have you ever thought that perhaps to get answers to these questions I've asked, is that you've ever thought about picking a role model and somebody that you could learn from, that you could respect, someone you could care about, someone who could share their views with you without being threatened or anything like that? Have you ever thought about doing that?
Actually, I have, and that's something that's just happened kind of recently. He's a really, really, really terrific guy. I respect him immensely, and well, he's been helping me out a lot. You know,
That makes life easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, it actually does a whole lot. I mean, I've sort of grown up all my life without too terribly many, you know, role models, and this guy just sort of came into my life somewhat recently, and
Super.
It's been absolutely terrific having him around to sort of, you know.
Well, you have a good heart and you have a good soul. And I don't want you, and I want our listeners and our viewers, excuse me, get back to my radio jargon, but I want our viewers to understand that there's nothing wrong taking your time making decisions. And there's nothing wrong with making a decision on a life plan. And especially people who are older, who have a lot more responsibilities, they don't really have much choice. They gotta have a life plan. But as you are still experiencing life and deciding what you want to do, you have a lot more flexibility than most. But it's always important to have a good role model and someone you can trust, because that big old world out there can get real brutal in a hurry.
Yeah.
And to have that is very important. So, but anyway, that's all what's part of the life plan. So we're going to put that on our website, and now we're going to put you to work. Unfortunately, you do not qualify for the trivia gift. I'm sorry to say that, but you don't. But anyway,
I want my gift basket, whatever it is, Doc, please.
But I was
begging
thinking
you.
that your gift basket would be theater tickets, but I'd probably the last place you want to go, since you're there a lot. But anyway, I'd like you to work on that, and then when you get it done, then I'd like you to go ahead and we'll have that put on our website, and perhaps you can offer some guidance for young people. They can kind of do a prototype based off yours, or a blueprint off yours, okay?
Okay.
All right, well, I appreciate you coming on the program.
Oh, of course.
I realize I gave you a lot of questions there to think about, but when we get back from this break, I'm going to sit down and basically talk to the camera and give people some guidelines to use to be able to do that. And of course, the trivia contest that you're not eligible But you can still go through the efforts. We'll find some type of prize to give you. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot,
Well,
Cameron.
trivia
Appreciate you coming up.
question,
You did just fine.
Thank you, Doc.
All right, you betcha. God bless you. All right, we're going to come back, and when we come back, we're going to give you the blueprint that Cameron's going to be working, and we're going to hold him accountable here. We're going to not only go ahead and put his life plan on there for you to see, but a real big picture of you with a true phone number. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back to the program. First of all, we want to thank Cameron for sharing his life story with us, and I hope that you follow his thought process and how he identified his goals. That's really what I want you to write down, so hopefully you've written those things down. But we want to thank him for sharing that with us. One of the things that's really important before I get to our trivia question is the fact that we do have a plan in life. You know, folks ask me all the time, whether it be I do my radio shows, the television shows, the books I've written, all these wonderful things that I've enjoyed in my 62 years of life, and the therapy sessions and all these different things I do. But one of the big questions they always ask me, and they say, why do you do this, Dr. Ralph? You know, certainly there are other things you can do. You're old enough now to collect Social Security. Why do you do this? And the reason why I do this and why I try to do these shows and do these sessions, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel good to see people address their challenges and come out better because of it. It helps me a lot to help people get off drugs and to be able to live a good life. And probably the most enjoyable experience I've had is when I first started in my private practice. I was really actively involved in the Lydia House in Omaha, Nebraska when I first got my PhD, and found out what it's like to be an abused woman and how those women and the things they endured are so horrible that they end up being scarred for life unless you can pick them up, dust them off, and give them a good new direction. And even though spousal abuse and domestic violence is not what we're talking about today, a lot of that can be avoided if you write a good life plan. So my suggestion to you is perhaps view this program a couple times maybe, write down some ideas, but come up with your own life plan. And that'll be your trivia question assignment, by the way, is write down all those goals that you want to accomplish. And not just for the year 2016, but write them down for 2017, 2018. Let's do what businesses do. Let's do a 3-year plan and list all those goals. And that's the first thing I want you to do. Then the second thing I want you to do is to list the things that you want to get rid of. You're carrying this big sack that weighs 60, 70, 80 pounds. Why do you keep carrying that? Show me the things you want to get rid of in this plan so that you don't have that burden to carry anymore, or perhaps just as important, you don't have to explain it anymore. Okay? And then the third piece of this is for you to write your life goals and do all the things I asked you to do, what you want to get rid of, so you're not carrying any more weight into the equation than you need to. But talk to me about your solutions, how you're going to get to your goals, and how you're going to be holding yourself accountable, which means you're a chance to reward yourself. Realizing that some are more difficult than others as far as goals, give yourself some small victories to start with, so that when you come out of this whole process at the end of 2016, you'll have a victory story to share, just like Cameron does. So let me know what you think. Send me your plan. And again, the best one I get this week, you're going to win that gift pack. Another thing I want to mention before we close today, and this is really more of a life lesson than anything to do with a life plan, but no matter what position of life you come from, we tend to dwell on our mistakes and our challenges and not our victories. It absolutely amazes me how often people, when you talk to them about their victories, they're almost speechless. They can't explain it. But boy, if I ask them what their problems have been, they can spend 35 minutes of my time. Let's change that around. Let's go ahead and deal with the issues that we have come across this in the year 2016. Resolve them, no band-aids. Resolve them with solutions. And then enjoy our victories. So that if you were to sit down with a session with Dr. Ralph and I asked you that question, hey, what success have you had this year so far? You've talked to me so much that I'll have to tell you, hey, it's time for us to break off our session. That's what I want to hear. So make that as your goal, and let's make this a success that we all can share. Take care of one another, and God bless.